This is Max Jones, and this is my screencast. I would also like to warn you that since I am living in a fraternity house, you may hear some odd sounds. I don't feel like redoing everything, so I apologize in advance. A learning disability is a condition that hinders one's ability to perform intellectually at the level other of those of the same age operate at. From 1940 to 1950, at this time research was still in its infancy. Subjects research was limited to brain-injured people. The only terms that were used were minimal brain damage and minimal brain dysfunction. All students with learning disabilities were put into a class of retarded children. From 1960 to 1970s, the Association for Children with Learning Disabilities formed in the 1960s. In the late 1970s, Congress passes PL 94-142, otherwise known as the Education of All Handicapped Children Act of 1975. Medical research tapered off around this time, although some new medical terms were introduced. These terms were as follows: dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. From 1980 to 2000, Congress passes IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and this is reauthorized in 1997. Around this time, there was a renewed interest in learning disabilities. Genetic studies commence. Some new terms come along too: reading, math, and writing disability. LD students can now go to a variety of settings. In 1937, Samuel Orton coined the phrase stephosympalia to define the condition of children having reading difficulties. We know this term today as dyslexia. Anna Gillingham, Bessie Stillman, Romelda Spaulding, and Grace Fernald all made efforts to aid children with reading disabilities during this time. Public Law 94-142 states that all special education students, regardless of ability, must be given access to the curriculum, while Section 504 states that all students must not be discriminated against for any disability he or she may have. We're now going to find casual and incidence factors. Casual can be genetic, difficulty with the pregnancy, prenatal conditions such as fetus not receiving enough oxygen, postnatal birth or trauma, and early childhood exposure to lead, aluminum, arsenic, mercury, and toxins all fall under this category. Meanwhile, the phrase incidence factors essentially refers to the difference in prevalence of diagnosis from one place to another. For example, Japan only diagnoses children with dyslexia 1% of the time, whereas in China, it's 33%. There are many characteristics of learning disabilities, but some of the primary ones include perceptual deficits or issues reading. Perceptual deficits do not reference issues with eyesight or trouble hearing. Perceptual deficits refer to the brain misinterpreting sensory input. Issues with reading usually stem from issues from the phonetic portion of the English language. Individuals with a learning disability commonly have something called a co-occurring condition. This means that the student has another disability coupled with the original diagnosis. Let's say Harley has a learning disability. In this case, if Harley also has ADHD, the ADHD would be counted as a co-occurring condition. Various programs are available for at-risk students. From the age of birth to the age of 2, the parents may request an evaluation from an early intervention team. From the ages of birth to 3, the child may be given an individualized family service plan by the state. From the ages of 3 to 5, parents may go online to find services to aid their child, or may be referred to their local early intervention team. Least restrictive environment means that children with disabilities are taught amongst children without disabilities. During this time, additional support can be given to the child in need to aid them in the classroom. Moving on to anatomy, the area designated for learning is called the central nervous system. The job of this area of the brain is to pick up sensory information from throughout the body via the spinal cord and make sense of what's received. Information regarding the 5 senses are made sense of, and the new information about the surrounding environment is discovered. Traumatic brain injuries have many side effects, which include, but are not limited to, reduced short and long-term memory, issues with higher order processing, symptoms of depression, trouble sleeping, and shortened attention span. It's worth noting that in the first couple months and even years of life in humans, the secondary and tertiary cortical areas of the brain are not yet mature, leaving them at an increased risk of permanent damage. Autism is a neurological disorder that can affect many aspects of a learner. First, the child with autism is likely to have issues socializing, as they struggle to understand social interaction in a way that children without autism do. This interferes with many aspects of the school experience. In addition, autism seems to be genetic. Autism has a higher rate of occurrence in families that have had it before. ADHD, commonly caused by the environmental toxin lead, results in decreased ability to pay attention and issues dealing with stimuli in an organized way. Despite all of this, children with ADHD seem to have an enhanced ability to pay attention to electronic stimulus, a detail that can be effectively used to teach children with ADHD at the same time. Biochemical influences on learning references the effects various medications have on children with disabilities such as ADHD and Tourette's. Ritalin seems to be the most consistent. It's shown to increase work output and accuracy in children with ADHD, while simultaneously lowering the occurrence of undesired behavior, such as random outbursts and frustration. Methylphenidate has also been shown to decrease the rate of occurrence and severity of tics in people with Tourette's. Research on memory has yielded several things. First and foremost, in order for students to learn, they must be able to attend to stimuli, encode information about that stimuli, integrate and store data into memory, and be able to retrieve the data as they are needed. Classrooms with much less sound seem to help all students. Background noise seems to disrupt the learning process. Retrieval refers to the process students go through to remember information learned in the past. Metacognition is a form of abstract thinking. Therefore, young children who still think concretely do not typically grasp this concept. Some examples of metacognition include making predictions, visualization during reading, and verbalization. Phonological processing problems usually arise early in development. Children fail to speak single-syllable words by the age of 1, 2 words by the age of 2, and complete sentences by the age of 3 are at risk of having a phonological processing disorder. These disorders occur in the left temporal lobe, unlike dyslexia, which occurs in the right temporal lobe. These disorders usually happen during the 5th months of gestation and appears to be somewhat hereditary. In 1975, the Education of All Handicapped Children Act was implemented, which gave all children, regardless of ability, the access to a free and appropriate education, also known as FAPE, within the least restrictive environment, or LRE. The law has since been revised and appropriated under the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, in 1990. IDEA's purpose is to serve those with disabilities in education through extended service, post-graduation 2 to 5 years, and IEPs, which we will still cover later. Section 504 states that it is unlawful to discriminate against students with disabilities within programs that receive federal funding. Finally, in 2000, the No Child Left Behind Act cuts funding to schools who do not perform well. When it comes to the rights of parents, parents have the right to require confidential treatment of their child's records, which they may inspect, have copies of said files, release records if the school grants permission in writing, be notified 10 days in advance of meeting relating to their child, request assessment for their child, have the child assessed in their own language, request an independent evaluation at the public's expense, have input in the IEP, refuse services, place child in private school fully paid if deemed necessary. Teachers, on the other hand, have a right to work in a safe environment. Teachers have a right to be treated respectfully by their students. They have a right to be able to teach. Teachers have an obligation to notify parents before beginning the evaluation process to set up an IEP. In addition, teachers have an obligation to follow the guidelines set forth in the IEP, and teachers should realize that parents have the right, by law, to access and have copies of anything teachers add to a student's file. The purpose of a behavioral intervention plan is to help the student when it comes to troubled behavior within the classroom, as school psychologists may be required to measure the child's needs. The Michigan Education Trust helps one save tuition and avoid rising costs. While Section 504 and IDEA are similar, there are important differences to note, namely eligibility. Section 504, for example, is rather flexible when it comes to eligibility, whereas IDEA is not. Parents may become an advocate for their child. Information can be found at www.idonline.com. Information includes types of legislation, information on disabilities, and so on. Students also have some specific rights, which include receiving due process when getting in trouble at school, review of all documents, be treated with respect by all school staff, receive a prompt hearing, expect a safe learning environment, receive a free and appropriate education, and be provided accommodations for their learning disabilities. An initial IEP is the first time a student is given an IEP. Rigorous testing and lots of careful inspection go into this process. A transition IEP is implemented at the age of 16 to help the child enter the real world. Once a year, an IEP review is done, in which the whole IEP is looked at for improvement. If an IEP is deemed ineffective or not helping the student, then the IEP is reevaluated. A due process hearing is done when a resolution between parents and school does not seem possible. The parents have the right to an impartial hearing. Finally, an addendum to an IEP is a simple change in the IEP to improve the process. Progress report is an updated report to ensure the improvement of the student.